This video, we'll look at this set of guided notes titled Measuring Biodiversity. Species aren't evenly distributed among taxonomic groups. In other words, if you were to look at all the families of organisms in the world, there's not an equal number of organisms in each one of those families. There are certain families of organisms that are more dominant than others. The group with the most species are the insects, class Insecta. There are 900,000 identified species of insects worldwide. Far and away is again the largest group of organisms on the planet. We like to think of humans as being the dominant species on the planet. We would love it if mammals like ourselves were the dominant species on the planet, but the fact of the matter is there's more bugs than anything else. There are types to reproduce in crazy numbers. There's a tremendous amount of diversity among insects. They fill many niches. They can adapt to many environments. They're found pretty much everywhere. And as a result, they are indeed the most successful class of organisms on the planet. In all, have identified about 9 million different species. But most scientists believe that's just the tip of the iceberg. There are many, many more species out there that we haven't discovered. Think about the oceans. We spent less time at the bottom of the ocean than we have on the moon. Gives you an indication of what might be down there, what might exist that we haven't even seen yet. Think about the rainforests in South America. We've explored such a small portion of those. We've cataloged just a small portion of the species that live there. So again, there are many, many more to be discovered. As far as biodiversity is concerned, again, it's not going to be an even distribution. Not only are there a different number of animals in each of the different classes and families and so on, but where you find those species on the planet isn't evenly distributed. What you tend to find are more species closer to the equator, and then fewer species as you near the pole. It's very similar to the human population. You find far more humans in the tropical areas than you do at the poles. You find far more diversity in life near the equator than you do near the poles. This is called latitudinal gradient. This is the distribution of mammals in the Western Hemisphere. The darker colors represent a larger number of species of mammals. And as you see, the darker colors are right around the equator. You find most mammal species near the equator. As you move towards the poles, both the top and the bottom of our illustration here, you see fewer and fewer species. So again, most of your species are concentrated near the equator and in the tropics. As you move towards the poles, you see fewer and fewer species. We alluded to this before, and now we're going to get it in our notes in writing. There are benefits to biodiversity. Ecosystems provide us with things. They provide us with services and they provide us with goods. Services are things they do to help human survival. An ecosystem service is something that's important to human life. It helps support human life. Examples of ecosystem services are cleaning and filtering water. Survival tactic, if you're ever stuck somewhere and you don't have any fresh water with you, you don't drink river or lake water. What you can do is move a few feet away from the edge of the river or the lake, dig a hole until you hit water, and drink that. Because the earth, the ground itself, and the bacteria that live within it will literally clean that water and filter it. Yeah, it'll be muddy. Yeah, it'll taste like mud, but it won't hurt you because those ecosystems filter and clean the water. They also help keep the air clear of pollutants. One of the ones we talked about specifically, one of the greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, is full of plants and photosynthesis. Will remove that carbon dioxide from the air and replace it with the oxygen we need. That is an ecosystem service. Again, we also get goods from our systems. These are things that we literally use in our day-to-day life, like fibers for making paper. We need to have trees, paper. Ecosystems provide us with those trees. We get food from our ecosystems. And yeah, we do a lot of agriculture. Yeah, we hunt and all, but there are certain things that we can't farm. So we have to get them from ecosystems. Certain things that we haven't figured out how to grow in captivity or on a farm that we still have to get from the wild. And ecosystems provide us with that. There are benefits to the ecosystem itself from having high biodiversities. High biodiversity, as we alluded to before, is the key to resistance and resilience. Resistance, again, is an ecosystem's ability to resist a change when a disturbance occurs. So the disturbance happens, but the ecosystem stays the same. That's high resistance. You need good biodiversity to have high resistance. Resilience is an ecosystem's ability to return to normal after a change has occurred. And again, high biodiversity is what allows that to happen. If you have a biodiverse ecosystem and a change happens, there will be something in that ecosystem that can deal with the change. If you don't have high biodiversity, you could wipe out an entire ecosystem. Biodiversity is important to agriculture and medicine. In agriculture, we create hybrids by combining domesticated plants with wild plants to help them tolerate climates and disease. An industry that you will find around here is winemaking. And the European varieties of grapes cannot survive in climates like ours. So what has to happen is they hybridize them with grapes from around here, and by grafting the stems and leaves onto the rootstocks of local grapes, they can survive the winters here, they can survive the hot summers here, and be used in agriculture. That's hybridization. In medicine, there are a lot of compounds that we find in plants and animals that will help us treat disease. For example, the rosy periwinkle produces compounds that are used to treat lymphoma and leukemia. And again, we go back to this idea that there's a lot of species out there we haven't discovered yet. We have to protect ecosystems because in that 100 acres of rainforest that we're cutting down to make a farm that's only going to last and produce crops for a year or two until we destroy the soil, may have had that one species in it that had a chemical in it that would have cured cancer. So again, we have to look out for those things in our environment. Biodiversity also has economic benefits as well. Through ecotourism, for example, we can make money by taking tourists on safari in Africa to go diving on the Great Barrier Reefs and so on. If we destroy those ecosystems, we destroy that part of the economy. We are losing biodiversity naturally through extinction. There is something called background rate of extinction that's always happening. But there have been times when the extinction rate has been far higher than normal. These are called mass extinction events. There have been 5 mass extinction events through geological history. And during those, more than 1/5 of all animal families and half of all species have gone extinct. Some have been as high as 80%. This is a map of all the ones that have happened through history. We have the Triassic, Jurassic one, where we lost 80% of species. We had the late Devonian one, where 75% of all species were lost. You can see the Permian Triassic one was 96% of all species. You can see on here what caused those. We had some methane producing bacteria that put a bunch of carbon dioxide in the air, caused global warming, and reduced the oxygen levels in the ocean. That's what caused the Permian Triassic extinction event. We had the asteroid impact of the Ordovinian Silurian extinction event. the increased volcanic activity that went along with it. You can see in here what actually caused it. There's some algae blooms right there. This is what we see when we see eutrophication, late Devonian period, growth of roots from new plants release nutrients into the ocean. We had an algae bloom that happened, eutrophication, that killed 75% of the species. So again, disruptions to the ecosystem have been what caused those. And these have all been natural extinction events. Again, nothing that humans have done because humans weren't even around. That's not to say that humans don't cause extinction. The current extinction rate is about 500 times normal background rate. As we deforest land, as we build houses and golf courses and shopping malls, we're removing ecosystems. And as a result, we are killing off species. And right now, the extinction rate is about 500 times the background rate. So we can say we are in the midst of a mass extinction rate right now. Animals are classified based on their chances for extinction. Endangered species are in serious risk of extinction. Those are the kind of things that will almost inevitably go extinct. Axolotls, those are extinct in the wild. There aren't any left. They are sold for aquariums. They are kept in captivity, but there are none left in the wild. We have to figure out how to breed them and get them back in the wild again, or they'll be lost forever. The ring-tailed lemur, another example. It's loss of habitat there, cutting down the places they live, turning them into human populations. The ring-tailed lemurs almost exclusively found in zoos these days. There are very few left in the wild. Threatened or vulnerable, they're likely to become endangered soon. It's estimated that 25% of mammals are threatened or endangered already. So a lot of mammal species are vulnerable to extinction. These are two examples of vulnerable species. The Arab manakin and the Sumatran rhino, both of them are suffering from habitat destruction or hunting. And again, we are causing this and making these animals threatened and perhaps eventually extinct. Habitat change and loss is the primary cause of biodiversity today. We're losing. These species are being threatened by what we do. Habitat fragmentation is one part of that. We take a single large forest, we break it down into small pieces, again, to build roads or subdivisions or whatever. And animals have a hard time getting back and forth between the two places. This is causing a loss in food, shelter, and other resources, and again, leading to a drastic loss in biodiversity. We also have issues with invasive species outcompeting the native species, driving those native species out of ecosystems. And a lot of this is human caused. And we have pollution. Pollution can kill whole populations, not just single individuals within those populations. We overharvest and poach. We have limits on things for a reason, and when we poach, we do damage to those populations, reducing them to unsustainable levels. We've caused climate change. That's having major impacts on population size. For example, polar bears, as ice melts, having a harder and harder time hunting. I was reading an article the other day about a mother polar bear and her cub that were being tracked via GPS, had to swim 275 miles to get from one chunk of ice to another. Mother made it because mother had fat reserves. The baby died because it didn't. So again, we're having major impacts on species, and we just have to recognize those impacts we're having. And I'm not saying we need to stop doing the things we're doing. We just have to find ways to do them better. We're stewards of this world, and we have to make sure we don't destroy it. Scientists estimate that a 1.5 to 2 degree increase in global temperature could put 20 to 30% of the world's plants and animals at the risk of extinction. So again, when scientists talk about global temperatures increasing 1 degree Celsius, that's a pretty important thing to listen to. It doesn't seem like a big temperature change, but there are whole groups of organisms that can't tolerate that. And another half a degree could reach a tipping point that there's no return from. So again, we got to watch these things. We got to keep doing the things we're doing because again, the technology is what raises our carrying capacity and we can't just stop. We just have to find ways of doing it better. You probably noticed I started talking faster. That's because It's 7:44 now. I'm surprised nobody's here yet. If I missed anything, I will post it as a separate video.